The most controversial fitness guru you've never heard of challenged everything we thought we knew about endurance training. Phil Maffetone's radical idea? Stop training so hard. Picture this, fluorescent lights flickering in a crowded 1980s gym. Sneakers squeaking, iron plates clanking, and no pain, no gain wasn't just a motto, it was gospel. But from the sidelines, one outsider saw something else. Elite athletes were breaking down, weekend warriors were burning out and getting injured, and runners were getting slower, not faster, even though they were training harder than ever before. In this video, I'm going to show you the simple math that Phil Maffetone figured out to help reverse this trend, the counterintuitive test that proves that it works, and how I went from barely running a 5K to finishing a marathon, all while training easier than ever. But first, let's talk about the problem that no one else saw coming. In the 1980s, the endurance world was built around intensity. Harder was always better. Marathoners were clocking 100+ miles per week, triathletes were doing double sessions every day, and athletes were praised for suffering and punished for resting. Phil Maffetone, a holistic doctor with a background in exercise science, wasn't part of that inner circle. He was watching from the outside, and what he saw, frankly, disturbed him. Athletes were training harder than ever, but they weren't improving. In fact, they were regressing. Injuries were piling up, and burnout was becoming commonplace. And even the best in the world were falling apart. Take Alberto Salazar, for example. He was one of the most dominant American marathoners of his time, logging up to 150 miles per week. He once said, "I was convinced that the harder you trained, the better you'd be. Pain was simply part of the deal." But by age 27, Salazar's career was essentially over. His performances collapsed, and his times were getting worse and worse. He would later admit that overtraining and burnout ended his prime years far too early. And then there was Dave Scott, a 6-time Ironman world champion. He was training over 40 hours a week, stacking swim, bike, and run sessions every single day. He won big, but even he acknowledged later that this approach wasn't sustainable. He was always flirting on the edge of injury and fatigue. And you have to remember, these were elite athletes, the best of the best at the time. And even they were breaking down, chasing the more is more philosophy. And that's where Phil Maffetone saw what others were ignoring. They weren't failing because they were lazy or unmotivated. They were failing because they were chronically overtrained. Stress hormones going through the roof, energy systems fried, immune systems shot. Like a phone that never gets a full charge, they were living in survival mode, not in adaptation mode. Maffetone had found a crack in the system, but now came the hard part, offering a solution that nobody wanted to hear. When Maffetone stood up at endurance conferences and told coaches that their methods were backwards, their reactions were hostile, to say the least. They laughed, they rolled their eyes, and they called him a quack. But Maffetone had something powerful. He had a really simple system and a really simple formula. It became known as the 180 formula. Take 180 minus your age. That gives you your baseline number. From there, we're gonna adjust for your current condition. So if you've been training consistently with improvement over the last few years, you could add 5 beats. If you've recently had inconsistent training, injuries, asthma, or frequent illness, you subtract 5 from that baseline number. And if you're coming back from illness, surgery, or burnout, then you would subtract 10 from that number. So if you're 40 years old and have been training consistently, your MAF number might be around 145. But if you're coming back from injury, it might drop to 130. That adjusted number becomes your maximum aerobic training heart rate, your MAF number. MAF stands for maximum aerobic function. The core principle is to keep your heart rate below this calculated threshold during exercise to strengthen your aerobic system, which over time will lead to increased fitness and a faster pace at the same heart rate. And the rules are simple. Train at or below that number for most of your aerobic work. So obviously you need a heart rate monitor to do this. You could use a wrist-based heart rate monitor on your watch, but if you want more accuracy, I recommend a chest strap. Maffetone had identified a problem that nobody wanted to see. The fitness establishment was missing something fundamental about how the body actually adapts to training. But calling out the problem was the easy part. His fix looked almost ridiculously simple, and that's part of why people dismissed it. The solution he was about to propose would make him the most controversial figure in endurance sports. And the fitness establishment went ballistic. Coach pushback and skepticism was intense. They called him a quack for suggesting athletes slow down when everyone knew speed came from pushing limits. So Maffetone was suggesting that we do the bulk of our training at relatively low heart rates, at what feels like a very easy effort compared to the high-intensity training that was popular at the time. And the science backed him up on this. By training with this method, it keeps your body in fat-burning mode instead of burning sugar. And here's why that matters. Your fat stores are nearly unlimited. You could run for hundreds of hours with the fat stores that are on your body currently. The carb stores are tiny. If you are only using sugar for fuel, you could probably run for about 90 minutes compared to the hours that you could use when you're burning fat. So if you train your body to burn fat efficiently, you unlock sustainable energy that doesn't hit a wall or bonk. Now, to track progress, Maffetone created the MAF test. Warm up for 10 to 15 minutes, then run a fixed course, 3 to 5 miles, keeping your heart rate at or below your MAF number. Track your time and repeat the test every 4 to 6 weeks. And if your pace is improving while your heart rate stays the same, you're building true endurance. But here's what makes that method controversial and also forces you to trust the process. The Maffetone method actually makes athletes slower before it makes them faster. It's embarrassing, you have to walk hills, you might get passed by joggers, and it looks like you're not trying that hard. You finish a workout and you feel like you're still fresh. But those who trusted it, they saw a transformation. It's important to note that the method isn't just about running slower, it's about rewiring the entire energy system so that way your body becomes a fat-burning machine instead of being dependent upon sugar. But theories mean nothing without results. And the first real test would require someone with everything to lose. Mark Allen was already a world-class triathlete when he found Maffetone. He was fast, respected, and sponsored. He risked it all to try something completely counter to everything he'd been taught. He trained at MAF. He ditched the high-intensity sessions, and his race times got slower at first. Months went by, sponsors questioned his decisions, and fans thought he was done. The mental game alone would break most people, but Allen stuck with it. Using the Maffetone method, he watched his speed come back with less effort than before. He wasn't just getting back to where he was breaking through to new levels, eventually winning 6 Ironman World Championships, all built off of the foundation of this Maffetone training. And Mark Allen wasn't alone. Success stories started to spread within the elite community. More and more champions started winning using this slow approach. Athletes in their 40s started winning and beating competitors half their age, challenging everything we thought we knew about elite competition windows. And this approach started to gain more and more mainstream acceptance. But the real test wasn't about these genetic freaks, these world-class athletes who had perfect training conditions. The question was, could regular people use this approach to get similar results? So let me tell you about my experience with the Maffetone method. I've never considered myself to be an endurance athlete. When I played baseball in college, I was a sprint athlete. I would run 90 feet, maybe 180 feet at a time, and then that would be my limit. I felt strong and powerful, but I definitely didn't have endurance. And the worst day of the year for me was every year we would do a 5K running test just to make sure that we had stayed in shape over the summer. And no matter how in shape I felt, that 5K never felt good. So fast forward a few years, I got the opportunity to run in a 10-mile race. I had been doing a little bit of endurance work at the time, and I had no real training plan, but I thought I could work through the pain and just push through, running faster and faster over time. And at first, it worked. I was able to build my distances up. I ran a 10-mile race, and soon after, I ran a half marathon. But the problem was after the race. I would be completely debilitated for the rest of the day, and I truly had pushed myself to the limit in these races. So fast forward a few more years where I had run some more half marathons, and I decided that it was time, now or never, to run a marathon. So for the first time, I really started to look into different endurance training techniques, and that's when I came across the Maffetone method. And at first, it seemed really counterintuitive. I had always had this no pain, no gain mindset, and I was always pushing hard for whatever gains that I got. This idea of dialing things back and making things easier was counterintuitive to everything that I thought I knew. But knowing that this marathon was going to be one of the biggest challenges that I had ever faced, I trusted the process. I slowed down. That summer felt painfully slow. Some days it was so hot that I had to alternate 1-minute walks with 1-minute runs. And that's when the magic happened. About 3 months into my training program, seemingly overnight, I was able to drop a minute off of each mile. And all of a sudden, I felt like I could run easier, faster, just like Mark Allen did. I've been able to find my endurance and go for distances that I never thought possible. So as I mentioned, I'm training for my first 100-mile race, which is coming up in a little bit less than a year. So I decided to reset, to get back to my foundation of aerobic training. And I was curious, is that formula accurate? I know it was accurate enough, but I really wanted to dial things in. So I recently did a VO2 max test using a mask and state-of-the-art equipment, and the results were pretty much dead on. So the test showed that my zone 2 training is right at 135, whereas my MAF number using the formula is 136. So this proves that what I've been doing has been pretty much accurate all along, and even if it was off by a few more beats per minute, it's still really close and really accurate. This old school formula, 180 minus your age, lined up with the high-tech lab data. Phil Maffetone didn't just create a training method, he sparked a revolution. You've probably heard of Zone 2 training, which is essentially the same as this Maffetone method, and he proved that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is to slow down in a world that is obsessed with going faster and faster. So here's your experiment. Take 180 minus your age, get a heart rate monitor, and train at or below your MAF number for the next 28 days. And run an MAF test on day 0 and then again on day 28, and watch what happens. Now, the official Maffetone method says not to add any intensity yet. Personally, I like to do the 80-20 rule. 80% of your training is at very easy intensity. 20% of your training can have a little bit more speed work built in, and that just keeps your leg turnover high, keeps your speed as you start to slow things down. So it's up to you. If you want to keep everything at your MAF number or less for the 28-day experiment and see what happens, you can. Or if you want to keep 1 day of speed work in there, be my guest. So try the experiment, challenge your assumptions, and see what happens. Drop a comment below. I'm in for the 28 days if you want to take on this challenge, and I'd love to hear about your results after the month is over. You can comment that as well, and subscribe to our channel for more science-backed, testable experiments that actually improve your performance. And if you're looking for a training system built on these exact principles, strength, conditioning, and an aerobic base, check out our Always Ready program. The links are in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the fastest way to move forward is to slow down.